So having an email, this is just on Fridays, encapsulating what happened during the week and then what's coming the following week. I know I should know some of this already, but I give the example of the field trip form. I may have signed that weeks ago, but I don't remember that I need to pack a lunch next week. So for me, those communications and knowing what's happening, that does help me build trust. And
incident does happen, I want to hear about it. And I understand that as educators, we're dealing with hundreds of kids every single day, and it's very challenging. But especially when there's harm done, not just physical harm, but emotional harm. I feel like as a parent, I know my child best, and to work in partnership with the school, I at least need that phone call. My first grader was hurt at school, and I didn't know about it until my third grader said, I saw, and she said my daughter's name, crying today at school. And I said, what? And this child of mine never cries, and well, never, but rarely cries. And it wasn't until I said, come here, what happened? She told me what happened, and then I felt her head, and she had a big bump on her head. And then I emailed the teacher and said what happened, and then we had a conversation. So I need to know as a parent that you see my child, and that if they're harmed, that I'll hear about it. But what is nice is that initial communication beforehand. Building that trust is crucial. It could be a note home, a handwritten note home. It could be a phone call. It could be an email. I think there's a misconception that some of our families don't care about their kids because they're not perceived as engaged in the school process. I think it's important to remember that historically, education has not served our people well.
I think building that relationship with the teachers was really key. My dad was a teacher as well, so we come from a family of educators, and I remember even as a kid being taught not to be afraid of teachers. I didn't see them as sort of the other. They were part of our family and someone that I got used to communicating with. But I think kids sometimes don't always feel that way, and parents especially. And as Boo said, a lot of families may have their own biases about education or hurts that they're overcoming. There's nothing like getting that phone call and you're like, okay, what happened? And then you find out it's not, we're having a field trip. Can you come? Can you be a part of that? Or can you, we're having this celebration. Is there something we can share about your family that would be helpful? Or, those things are really nice, so that, again, it builds that trust and communication. And I remember my son, when he was in school, one of the challenges he had a teacher that said, I want you to walk up to me every day, look me in the eye and say good morning. And a lot of for our kids, that's a really rude thing to do. And for some it's not. So, my answers aren't for everyone, but for my son, he would shake before he went in because he felt he had to do that. And so to ask him to do that and speak up, and it was really hard. So when I talked to them, I was trying not to shake up their world, because that's where they live, and that was respect to them. And for him, it was respectful to say hello and quietly go to his desk, and that was him showing their respect. So try not to put people in a box, because as soon as you do that, you can kind of crush them, and you may not ever see that again.
Just having the teachers just communicate on a regular basis. So like Darius's teachers, we would always hear when he was in trouble all the time, and that's literally it. Like, they would call when he was in trouble, they would email when he messed something up. But this year, the one of his teachers is like, what I like to do is just email every Friday, just say what we've been working on and how they've been doing great, and kind of some things to work on. And she just makes it like a weekly thing, because then I don't have to like reach out and be like, how's he doing? How's he doing? Because I feel like I bug the teachers a lot. Like, how's he doing? How's he doing? So like we would get calls and be like, Darius ran out of the class today. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Not that's cool, but like, okay, we'll deal with that. And then I would get a call the next day, Darius is really not doing good at this. And then I would get a call the next day, and Darius is doing, and it just like brought me down. I'm like, my kid is like, and I know he's not a failure. Like, he's super smart. He's passing his tests. He's getting done with his assignments early, and then he's running out of the classroom. It's like not to say that makes it better, and but like, parents still want to know that their kids are doing the right thing, and the things that they are doing well. And it also helped with him to be like, yeah, your teacher said you're doing amazing at this, and he's like, yeah, really. I also saw that. So when it was like, we were bringing up bad things, he even noticed it, like, oh, all they notice is the bad stuff. That's all they ever notice. When the one teacher came this year and was like, you know, I definitely like to say all the positive things, like, you don't mind that, right? And I was like, you know, no, for sure. Like, email me a whole list of all the amazing things my kid is doing.
His attitude's been better this year because of it. I was even pulled aside by the principal, and she said it's really reassuring to see Darius, and he understands that the teachers are here to help him, and not, you know, they're not against him. I think that's what he was kind of conflicted against. He's like, well, they're always pointing out the bad things, and now that they're pointing out the good things, he's like, oh, I think they're here to help.
But we never hear any, I just, like, that makes me realize, like, we never hear anything from Imani's teachers at all. Well, and I guess maybe that is the thing, because she's a, you know, a good student. She does her work, she just does everything and never really gets in trouble. She's not, like, super excelling, but so that makes me realize, like, yeah, I want to hear some stuff.
I don't know if it's hard for the teachers to reach out to the parents. I know Olivia's brother works. He's like the principal now. He's mentioned that making that phone call to the parents is the hardest thing to do, especially when your kid is, like, you know, disrupting the class or something.
Because this is the first year we've actually used it, but they sign in and it's per class, so the different teachers can, like, post pictures, and they also, like, write if they did, like, amazing things during that day. I really like this one because it was the field trip, and I kind of got to see, because I used to be able to go to all the field trips, and now that I'm in school I can't, so it really made me happy to see all the pictures. But they even post, like, stuff that they're doing in, like, the classroom and stuff that they're learning, pictures of, like, their group time.
And Imani thinks it's pretty cool because she sees herself there and she comments about the picture and what they did and what they were learning. Be like, "What'd you do today, Imani?" He's like, I don't know." But we'll pull out a picture and it'll spark spark in her brain. Like, "Oh yeah, we did this and that's what we're." That's pretty cool to see her get involved in.
I guess I always just want to be, like, updated on things before it's too late.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what too late even necessarily is, and, like, where you draw that line, but, like, even, like, I could just think of, like, examples for, like, Darius's grades, and it got, like, so much to where they were like, oh yeah, well, he has an F in math, and I'm like, okay, and we have a month left of school, like, what do I even do about that?
Right.
Like, how can we help? Because that's always my thing, is they're like, oh, Darius is failing this is okay, what can I do to help?
Right.
You know, like, maybe having things for the parents to do, and it is nice that we can look at the grades now. So I think that's also a helpful thing, is being able to me just log in and see his grades now. I don't have to keep asking, or only
The parent-teacher nights helped out a lot. We were able to talk to Darius' teacher and be like, "Hey, does he have homework?" And she's like, "Yeah, he has homework every night. This is where he should be in this binder." And we're like, "Dude, where's that paper at?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And he was like, "Yeah, he should have this paper every night. This is where you can look on it. So now we can be like, all right, D, where's your paper at? Where's your vocabulary? What are you supposed to study? You have a quiz coming up this Friday. Let's study Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Get your cards out." And that helped a lot.
Yeah, because one of the things he was failing because he wasn't turning in homework, but we didn't know. We're like,
We knew he was doing it because we were helping
like,
him out.
we
The
know
thing he wasn't doing, like, all right, what do they do when they come in class into the class? What do they do with their homework? He's like, "Oh, I did my homework," but there's a certain time where you're supposed to put your homework there. And we jumped on that, and it's been better. And now he's turning in his homework. It helps.
yeah, it definitely helps, even if they don't respond. Like, if you just let them know, like, because I know even sometimes I don't respond, but I do get it, and I do like it, and I like to know what's going on. Just always, like, maybe just always keeping the line of communication open. Always, like, even if parents aren't, always responding back, just letting them know that it's always open. You're always welcome to respond. I'm always want to hear what you have to say. I like to know that they want to hear, what I have to say. They want to know my opinion. They want to know how I can help them and how they can help me.
I did have a difficult time in the sense that I had a certain view of my sons and my daughter now also, and what I expect from them in the classes as far as rigor. And specifically for my sons, when we first got here, they were labeled gifted in LA, but not here. They didn't meet that test requirement. They did test above 80th percentile, but not in the 90-something percentile. And so they weren't able to go into the programs for advanced classes. But my understanding, just from speaking to teachers, was that even if you don't test in a certain percentile, after a year of being in classes, a teacher could recommend if they saw that your child would be okay in those classes. So we spoke to their math teacher in 7th grade and told them that we wanted them to observe and see how they were doing, and that we were hoping that by 8th grade they would be recommended to go into algebra. So my sons did well, very well, 7th grade, A's, tested very well. And come 8th grade, my expectation was that they would be recommended to go into algebra. The teacher that we spoke to said, well, their 7th grade teacher didn't give that recommendation. I'll wait and see. And so we thought, okay, well, let's see. There was not really clear communication as to what they were looking for. Was it certain test scores? What was it? And so my son saw as other kids were being recommended. And my sons were the only kids of color in that class. And they saw other kids being recommended, and who they felt, their perception, my son's perception was they were doing as well or even better, my sons and these kids, but they weren't getting recommended. So then, we went to made an appointment to speak with it wasn't a counselor, I don't know what the person's position was, that our sons are doing very well, they tested very well, they can handle Algebra 1. We don't know why the teacher's not recommending, but we want them in the algebra class. We know that they should be there. We want them challenged. And we felt like they were stalling, well, they have to do this much and that much, and and all kinds of hoops. And it took us a semester. And in between that, we were told that if we didn't like it, we could go to another school. But it was very frustrating to know that our sons could do that, and that they had to miss a semester of algebra before they were permitted to go in. For whatever reason, the expectations were never clear as how does a teacher recommend a student. So is it because we never were told any clear expectations of percentile in tests? This was based solely on teacher recommendation. So our questions was how do you decide to recommend one student and not another student? What was the criteria for that? And I think it's important those criteria are made very explicit so that parents don't feel that it's this, it's based on other factors. Our sons came to the conclusion they weren't being recommended because they weren't white. Whether that was correct or not, I will never know, right? Because the expectation wasn't made clear to us. And so they reached their own conclusion, right? Since there was nothing clear about that. We don't want to jump to conclusions. Often our kids are having challenges, our students, and we assume a lot. We assume they're not interested in school. We assume that the family's priority is not education, and we're assuming incorrectly. And so we have to step back and just talk to the student and find out what is going on, or talk to the parent. There's a lot of our kids are working, especially if you go into middle school and high school. In middle school already, you have kids who are working hours to help their families, or who are going through a lot of economic challenges, or all kinds of challenges that you just don't know about that are really affecting how they come and how they feel in class. And you might jump to a conclusion that they just don't value education, when in fact they value education very much, but there's all these other issues they have to deal with. And so take the time to find out what those issues are, whether it's issues with not having proper documentation. So there's a lot of core issues we have kids right now who are in deportation process, family members who are in this, or who are homeless, who are all kinds of issues that don't assume that you know why they're having a difficult time being on time or turning in work. There's a lot of things that you can find out if you just speak to them.
I think because of experiences I've had here, it makes it easier for me to talk to people. For instance, when my oldest son was in kindergarten here, and it was the very first day of school here, and there were computers in the back of the room, and another little boy was on the computer, and my child was the only person that looks like me in the class. And that was the first thing that kind of, not that we live in Seattle, so it is what it is, but you notice that when you're a mom dropping off your kid for the first time. So my son loves computers. Well, a little boy was working on the computer. He ran up and stood behind the boy, and he was leaning over his shoulder. And I thought it was the mother, but the grandmother came and was scolding my son for standing so close to her son. And I said, well, wait a minute. He's just trying to look at the computer. He's not bothering your son at all. And then I left just crying, because here I'm going to leave my son with people that are acting in my kid like this. So I don't ever want to make anybody feel the way that I felt when I dropped my son off. So whether it's a black family or an Indian family or a Chinese or Japanese or white, I don't care. I don't want them to feel the way I did when I left. So I try to keep a watch to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen, because it does not feel good. It just doesn't. And, they can cry when their kids go to college, not kindergarten. Oh, well, Isaac.
Yeah.
Isaac. He's ADD, but here at McGilvra, all of the teachers were so wonderful and they were accommodating, so we didn't have any doctor's notes saying he needed this or that. And they would always check in with him to make sure he had his homework, and they did everything here for him, which was great. And we never got anything put on paper that he had a learning disability. Then he went to Washington, and he scored like in the 97th, 98th percentile on all of his standardized tests. And he'd do pretty well in class because his dad and I were on him all the time to do his homework. And they never gave him any extra help. So then we went and had him tested, and the psychologist said that he needed extra help, he needed reminding, all the things that were being done here at McGilvra, he needed those things to continue at middle school. And then the counselor there said, well, his test scores really don't warrant that he needs that, even though by law they were supposed to do it. And my husband and I, our life was miserable at home because we were fighting with him so much to do his work. So finally I said, forget it, let's just not do anything. So then Isaac was failing, he was getting a D. And then I went to the counselor and I said, and then he went and read the report from the psychologist, because he hadn't read it before then. And they was like, oh, Mrs. Poole, I'm so sorry. Oh, we're gonna get this, and he needs this. And I'm looking at him like, that's what I've been telling you for the whole year. But it took my son to fail for you to even read the paperwork. So why even get the paperwork done if you're not gonna read it? And that's your job, to read it and to make sure my kid is. So that was a really, really negative thing for me at Washington. And they didn't do anything for him until the last week of 8th grade. That's when they put his IEP in place. So I just felt really, really gypped.
So
And I'm the first one that did not want my child labeled. I did not want my black boy labeled special needs. I didn't. But if that meant he was going to get this help, then I had to.